Okay, so today we're going to talk about the Westminster Declaration. So, John, would you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. My name is Jean-François Queralt. Most people just call me John. I am originally from Spain, based in Malaysia for the past 12 years now. And I manage an organization called the IO Foundation. We are a nonprofit working on data-centric digital rights, which can basically be summarized as the attempt to make sure that technology does not mess around with the final user. We look into it in a few ways, and one of them is to try to make sure that those protections come embedded transparently through the adoption of those protections across technical standards, so that when the technical standard is adopted by the marketplace of technology, those are embedded. And while we haven't been traditionally involved with anything that has to do with people typically called human rights, we got an interest as of late into everything that had to do with freedom of expression. And that's what basically led into eventually be part of the team who put together the Westminster Declaration.
Okay, so just for people watching, the Westminster Declaration was published in October 23 and is a statement signed by journalists, academics, technologists, which John is, and others advocating free speech and warning against global censorship trends, particularly around terms like misinformation and the censorship industrial complex. It was signed by signatories from across the political spectrum, such as Julian Assange, Edward Snowden, Matt Taibbi, Tim Robbins, John Cleese, Oliver Stone, Ayaan Hirsi Ali, Jordan Peterson, Jeffrey Sachs, John, and also my friend Adam Coleman. So, okay, obviously your company, you said, is around this area of digital rights, and that's how you got into this team. That's how to draft the Westminster Declaration. Was there some what kind of began that? What was the inciting incident?
So, if I want to give you a proper context, I need to go back a little bit into what triggered my participation and what was the context for that participation. Freedom of expression has been something on the table for quite some time for a number of reasons, historically speaking. And we can definitely say that, at least in the West, we have quite well achieved the point where freedom of expression is sometimes not a reality, yet, however, a possibility. So it's not as if you have it protected in every single country that composes the West. However, in certain places, it's very, very well armored. And the obvious example would be the US. Nonetheless, despite the problems that we've been observing in the rest of West countries in past 10, 12 years, it remains still quite superior than what you have in many other places around the world. Now, what was observed in, I would say, the most glaring situations started coming up in the past 8 years or so, was that there was a trend in civil society, in the NGO sector. You may want me to define what civil society is, just in case.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So again, historically speaking, what we had back in the days was just nonprofits, NGOs. And at some point, some people started claiming that wasn't exactly representative of the general population, because NGOs are essentially organized organizations that are legally registered and follow specific compliance rules depending on the jurisdiction. And what would be the mechanism for a simple individual to be able to have participation in certain processes that may require listening to what the population has to say? So if you were not legally registered, which has a cost and has a process, and it's time consuming, what would be those options? And all of a sudden, they came up with this umbrella term called civil society, which includes not only organized populations such as NGOs, but also individuals. And then all of a sudden, you can bundle into that academics and whatever you require. One thing that most people tend to overlook for sometimes strange reasons for me is the fact that in the end, everyone is civil society. At some point in your life, you are the user of something, or you are the receiver of something. You're at that end. Sometimes you are the precursor. Sometimes you are the one who is inflicting a specific action or initiating it. And most of the times, you're the one receiving it. And so civil society also has this, as a concept, has this kind of a blur delineation, because everyone can actually be civil society at some point. So going back to the question, what we were observing was that a lot of organizations inside civil society all of a sudden started using the excuse of freedom of expression to basically curtail the freedom of expression of others. Upon the argument that feelings were being offended. Now, I don't know if you're going to be cutting what I'm just going to say right now, but a lot of the stuff that I might be telling you during this episode might be extremely offensive for a lot of the NGO sector. And in fact, I've been thinking about what could be the repercussions of me saying this. It's just about time already to say it. I mean, it's been a long time coming for the NGO sector to be put into its right place, and to hear a few things that are very much necessary for the cleaning of the space, especially with everything that has been happening in the US and all of these scandals about USAID and so forth. The general impression of the NGO sector from the regular citizen is that all of a sudden everybody is corrupt.
Yeah.
That everyone was under the payroll of certain interests. When in reality, we do require to have NGO organizations or nonprofit organizations, because there's always going to be processes in which you require the representation of the general global population, and somehow you need to manage that. So how do I achieve it? That's another story. As in, how do you can keep it clean, transparent, and accountable? That's the main thing. Now, the reason why I mention all of this is because a lot of the ideological capture that we've been observing in the NGO sector came specifically because of funders.
Right.
And the way that was operationalized was to be able to use freedom of expression to shut down freedom of expression that was not aligned with those ideologies. The typical topics are always the same. I mean, the guidebook was not very diverse, I would say, to use a pun on there. It was always stuff about gender, race, all of those topics.
This is when intersectionality and what people call woke started to,
Exactly. And the way that they achieved this was quite cunning and smart. I have to give them credit for that. Was to essentially start redefining terms, then moving into updating codes of conduct for the most part. That was a very easy way to do it. And then expect compliance to those code of conducts retroactively. And even more perniciously, if that's an English term, make it outside of the environment of the organization of that code of conduct. So for instance, if you and I belong to organization A that has a specific code of conduct, all of a sudden someone pushes for all of the DEI terminology to be included into the code of conduct, as well as making sure, gender expression, blah, 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 blah. And once that is updated and everyone has to abide by that code of conduct, you will be then exposed to retroactively find, through, let's say, Twitter archaeology, posts that people may have done 5 years ago, 10 years ago, doesn't really matter. Bring them up to whoever is doing the code of conduct compliance processes inside the organization. And what they would do in occasions was to add in the code of conduct that code of conduct is to be observed outside of the organization itself. So it doesn't matter anymore that you have a personal opinion that has nothing to do with the topic of the organization. So your organization can be about. We may also want to discuss about the term of community, because it was also very much pushed by the same people in order to be able to always create categorizations, so that you can actually be put into a specific group that can be identified by a number of parameters, typically loose parameters, as in the deaf community.
Right.
Well,
yes.
there's a lot of people with deaf problems at different degrees.
Yes.
Someone
but the
who can
neurodivergent community.
Yeah, that's another nonsensical one, because you won't be able to measure it properly. There's no scale. That's a typical, by the way, as an aside, it's a typical problem in the NGO sector where KPIs do not exist, scales don't exist. You can't really measure what is it that you have identified as a problem, even less what's the solution that you want to provide. So in all of this blur circumstance comes this possibility of being able to shut down dissent and opinions that do not comply to whatever you want to push forward through the examination of the compliance on those code of conducts. And because they are blurry enough, anything goes. And I can just now start initiating processes to kick you out of that particular community. And the play is that the community has, or that group of people has grown enough and has become enough relevant on that particular space or topic that being kicked out has actual consequences for your ability to be involved in that particular topic. So they have become relevant enough. They are somehow the only place to go, but it's been now captured from a linguistic perspective. And it's basically an ideology. It's struggle sessions, different ways, different methodologies, sometimes public, sometimes a bit more private. It depends on how they sense the rest of the members to be aligned or not. And essentially what we had was this very, very strange situation where freedom of expression was used against freedom of expression, which just makes no sense whatsoever. I wouldn't qualify myself as a freedom of expression absolutist in the sense that I will provide to you, I will grant to you as much freedom of expression as you grant it back to me. So I'm happy for you to tell me anything that you want to tell me. I'm not going to limit the kind of things that you can tell me, for as long as you don't limit the kind of things that I can tell you back. So for the reciprocity factor is what matters to me in terms of what I'm going to be letting pass in terms of what is told to me, or what I'm expected to be told. So what happened there was my disappointment. Okay, sorry. Let me try to contextualize again properly. When I started when I started my organization back in 2018, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. My past was technical. I used to be a developer, system administrators, etc., etc. I landed into a world that I was expecting to be roses, meaning everyone is nice, everyone is trying to do something, etc., etc. And it took me some time, because you get plenty of stuff to pay attention to. It took me some time to realize that for the most part, a lot of NGOs are just there because it's a lifestyle, because it pays well for those who manage to land into a specific advocacy that is at that point very well funded. And I don't think it's an incorrect qualifier or observation to say that the NGO sector is largely a subcontractor market at this point, because they don't generate their own business. They don't generate their own income. So they're always depending on someone either donating or giving them money for a grant for a project. And typically, the people who give you the money have their own agendas. Now, where I'm going with all of this is that I was very surprised to observe that because of those circumstances, people would not voice out their concerns or their actual true internal thoughts under the fear of losing that money. And that created a perfect storm for those ideologies to come in, because essentially, being a yes man or a yes woman, there are only two sexes, there are only two genders, basically put them into the situation where all of those attempts just worked. And it was hard to find anyone in the NGO sector who would not voice out anything. And go ahead. I think you wanted to ask
No, I
something.
was good. Well, it would be impossible, really, wouldn't it? Because they'd just be let go.
Yes, so that would be one of the situations, or you would be shunned, or you would be also accused of something. I mean, context would be created so that your reputation gets destroyed. It has been attempted with us several times. We haven't ever been. This is probably the first time that we're going to be very open, as in very clear about our position or my personal position on the matter. Not that I have hidden myself, but I never went around with a flag saying, this is my position. But if you go through my ex post, I don't think it's very hard to figure it out. Now, for the most part, anyone who would have attempted to say to raise concerns about this, they would have definitely be ostracized. And in fact, my organization has been the target of some nasty behaviors and attempts of destroying our relationships with possible supporters, funders, and so forth. Mostly as well because of the intersectionality game. We didn't have enough points because I'm white, I'm straight, all that stuff. But okay, that's part of the game. So you just get into it. What became very ridiculous was this situation where you would see people pushing for, there has to be more inclusion, there has to be more diversity, and there's got to be more freedom of expression. And then 5 minutes later, they're canceling someone just because they didn't say something that they liked.
Yeah.
And my involvement with the Westminster Declaration was very unexpected. Because we don't work in traditional human rights elements or topics, I got contacted by someone. I'm not sure I can give names, so I'm just going to remain as vague as possible on that regard. I was contacted by someone asking me if I was going to be in London, in during that month, and turns out I actually was going to be. Just because I needed to watch Depeche Mode and Peter Gabriel before I die. That was basically the thing. And I had already booked my tickets and everything. Well, funny thing is I was supposed to go back to my hometown, so I booked tickets just back and forth just for that meeting. But I was in the area. And I remember sitting there in the room looking at the people who were there, and I was wondering, what the hell am I doing here?
Because the meeting took place in Westminster, which is the area,
that is correct.
London, which is where it gets its name from.
And at that time, there was no specific output or thought. It was just a congregation of people who were concerned about that particular topic. That had been an event the night before between Matt Taibbi and Schellenberger that was hosted by, what's this guy now? Can't remember his name. Anyway, and the reception was good. Tim Robbins was there. There was some VIPs and whatnot. And the next day was the conversation. And what I was observing was all these people in the room who definitely have very good careers and they've been very outspoken about certain things, way more articulate I could never be. And I really felt a little bit out of place. Now, I was very happy to be in the room because basically what it says about something may happen. I think there might be a seed here of some change, because some of the people who were involved were also from civil society itself. And the discussion moved, although it was on the traditional human rights part, what I felt was missing, and this is going to be linked hopefully with other stuff that I would like to discuss with you as to what's the current situation with technology, was that they were looking into what happens in the technical lingo will be at application level. So what happens in the application, the way people interact with technology is always going to be through an app, web browser, whatever it is. they were concerned about how that information is being, let's say, censored in certain platforms, etc., etc. I was trying to point to the problem that is never discussed in those environments. What happens with the technology that is built for that? What are the standards that those companies need to follow, or what are the algorithms that they themselves are putting together, and how does that affect all of this censorship complex that you are pointing out at? The conversation went for the whole, it was the whole day. And at some point, I think it was Toby. I think it was Toby Young who made the comment or the proposal that since we were in Westminster, how about issuing a declaration and calling it the Westminster Declaration? And that actually flew very well. We thought it was just fitting as a qualifier. Then came quite a number of months, because this was June. And as you say, this was the declaration was issued in September, I think it was October. So quite a number of months. And as you were also rightfully pointing out, it was an intention to cover as much political spectrum as possible. That was a very, very clear feature by design of the declaration. It wasn't a problem of being on the left, on the right, on the center, no matter what. This was a matter of principles, not a matter of being partisan. And I don't care who will be shutting you down; they are still shutting you down. I don't care who that is. And so, in order to, I know a lot of progressives are not going to like what I'm going to say, but at this very moment, more people on the conservative side of the traditional delineation of those things, which I'm not 100% sure really applies anymore, are more on the defense of freedom of expression than you would expect.
Yeah.
And so we found ourselves in this situation where we're going to be reaching out to all of these people that are very vocal. They are being tagged, rightfully or not, as much more conservative, much more right wing, and so forth. And right about that time, you started feeling the push about the far right moniker. Just because, again, if I insult you enough with a specific moniker, I'm going to be able to put you somewhere in,
yes.
Soundbite type of character assassination becomes easier. So we started then reaching out to all the contacts that we had, and looked into the possibility of also translate the declaration in a number of languages. And then what would be the media coverage about the whole thing? I never knew if it was a good thing or a bad thing, because I'm not necessarily a strategist for these kind of things. So I was looking at it from an outsider's perspective. There wasn't a coordinated use of the declaration, if you will, which was cool in many regards. And at the same time, I don't know if that didn't allow it for more exposure eventually. When it went out, it did receive quite a number of articles and press coverage. Part of the funny story is that, and this is Wikipedia, unbelievable. There was a Wikipedia page for the Westminster Declaration. And at some point, not too long after the publication of the declaration, there was an attempt to take it down. And then if you go through the discussion for the reasoning of the editors, it was just hilarious. It was kind of a fantastic meta example of what we were discussing. What do you care? It's already there. It's already in the media. Why would you want to take it down? Well, you want to take it down because 1984 happens to be a guidebook for a lot of people. I mean, archive.org. I can't remember exactly what happened with them. I know they have been somehow pronounced as part of the National Archive or something along those lines. I haven't looked into the whole thing. I just know that they are now part of the structure of the National Library system in the US, or something. I'm paraphrasing. I'm something along those lines, which they've been deleting a lot of information from the Wayback Machine,
Oh,
because
really?
yeah, yeah. And so whatever you think you're going to have as snapshots of what things used to be, the actual representation of the information, the way it was put out, well, that's 1984 in practice. Is quite interesting. Yeah, some of the people who were involved into it have kept in touch, and there's been a few activities and a few things
So who were
that
the
have been
key
happening.
players? You mentioned Matt Taibbi, Schellenberger.
Yeah, Michael
Were the
Schellenberger was
others?
definitely
Mhm.
was definitely behind it. And I'm not 100% sure that I can divulge the names of
Okay.
the.
Mhm.
I can tell you everyone who was in the room is in the list of signatories. That's for sure.
Right. Okay.
But who was involved in which capacity, that might be something that I cannot disclose.
Okay. The Declaration emphasizes free speech as a cornerstone of democracy. Now, which I think you've kind of gone onto that. So, which specific threats of free speech did you aim to address? Is there any other example you could give people who've never heard of it, or what exactly that you're fighting against?
At a very basic level, to me, freedom of expression is. It's funny. I was just thinking about this morning.
Mm.
There was a post on X that I was reading, and someone was claiming that freedom of expression was a human right. And I've personally come quite tired of the expression human right, because it's everywhere. Everything is a human right nowadays. And I don't think that's actually accurate. I don't think that it's something that we can apply to everything. And I was just, go ahead.
No, I mean, the Declaration does reference Article 19 of the
Yes,
Universal Declaration of Human
that is
Rights.
correct. That is correct. And I think in the context where the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was put out, I think it made a lot of sense.
Hmm.
In that particular how to say it, restricted.
Hmm.
I'm not. That's not exactly the word that I'm
Yeah.
looking at. As in delimited space of definitions. The feeling that I have is after that, the term has been weaponized.
Hmm. To mean
And
privileges more so.
to mean everything.
Yeah.
As in breathing is a human right for some reason. And in the UN, there was a voting, 2, 3, 4 years ago, I can't remember right now, to declare food a human right. What are you talking about? That's not. It's you can't. The consequences of passing that is quite dire. I'm not sure people are making the numbers.
Yeah.
And so what I was.
Explain that for people listening, just so that they can
Yeah,
understand.
so if you establish a right, you basically establish a number of obligations from the governments that are ratifying that particular right. And so all of a sudden, the governments need to now start giving you food because it's your right, and you can just go and sue them if they don't give you rice or or meat or whatever it is. One thing that always bothered me the moment that I had this realization about how much human rights were weaponized was the fact that they always talk about rights but never talk about obligations, responsibilities.
Hmm.
And I think the actual responsibilities topic is way more interesting than the rights per se. The way I was looking at it this morning was all of a sudden I was thinking, why they're hammering so much on human rights as a collective thing that has to happen, as opposed to an individual right.
Mm-hmm.
So what I realized, or not realize, it's not as if I have come to a final conclusion in my head. It's a ongoing thought process where I'm thinking, is freedom of expression in fact just an expression of your individuality? Because after all, you are putting out the thoughts that you have in the black box of your head. Now, the problem is if I look at it from that individual lens, it's harder to control a group of people as opposed as if I put a collective lens to the thing. Then I can actually control all that group through that thing.
Yes.
So the human rights thing means now everybody's a human for some reason. We seem to know how to define humans, but we don't know how to define a woman. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, the postmoderns are still haven't cracked that one out, but don't worry, because they, what was the term? Next kin? No, otherkin.
Otherkin.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, the otherkin are going to come and flabbergast you for a while. And so I have the feeling that a lot of those rights are basically an expression of the fact that you are an individual, and the survival of that individual requires those to be preserved in order for that survival to happen.
Yes.
So I tend to think, for instance, into three very basic ones: freedom of expression, freedom of movement, and freedom of association. If I don't have freedom of movement, basically I cannot go where the resources are required for me to survive.
Yeah.
And I see an orchard.
Yeah, just to interrupt with this idea of these 5-minute cities, or whatever they're calling them.
15-minute cities,
15-minute cities. It seems that we're kind of pushing towards going back to the time where you needed to have a passport to leave your county, which used to happen a few hundred years ago.
Funny you mentioned that. Barely 2 hours ago, I was reading another post about this guy who's a journalist, and it doesn't have a small account by any means. And he was apparently traveling and got stopped by the cops, and the cops were asking him what was he doing there, because he was about 2 hours and a half away from where he lives.
So he has no business being there, basically.
Yes. And the guy was like, well, I'm traveling, I'm visiting family. What? And he asked, was there any infraction? Did I do anything wrong? No. We just saw that you are not in your area. I'm paraphrasing. The UK.
UK.
I think yeah. I think I reposted the whole thing, so you can probably find it on my wall. Which is I don't know. We say in Spanish, white in a bottle can only be milk. It's a very obvious situation. So going back to the example,
freedom of association.
Yes. So freedom of movement is I'm able to go wherever my resources are. Freedom of association is I'm able to get together with the people who might be able to help me survive, or to self-actualize myself, or whatever it is that the problem that I have in the moment. And freedom of expression is the mechanism through which I can say exactly what is it that I need. I consider those rights, I'm going to use the term just for the sake of the conversation. I consider those rights mandatory or inevitable to avoid an individual's demise.
Yes.
If I play the a timeline on me restricting freedom of expression, freedom of movement, or freedom of association long enough, that individual dies. That's it.
Yes, because individuals have different needs.
Correct. And jumping into the technological part, and this being the reason why we started looking into freedom of expression in my organization. Like I said, it was never really our focus. What I got to talk with the team was the importance of freedom of expression moving forward with LLMs. And the reason is, if the quality of the output, all things being equal, okay, so different models will have different performance, etc. In general, everyone has got into the bandwagon of the prompting technology, or prompt engineering. And I think we all have discovered that the better my prompting is, the better the output potentially is going to be. And again, that will depend on the performance of the model. But if my prompting is bad, the output is going to be bad, no matter the model. Now, for one single individual, that might not be a big deal. Whether I can get nicer posts for my social media platform for my organization that I'm more or less engaging, well, the needle of the universe is not changing for that.
Yes.
But at the aggregate, if you have a whole country that doesn't allow their citizens to express themselves exactly how they would like to, in the aggregate, you're basically hindering the ability of your own country on the race for the LLM master control, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Arms race, exactly. And my prediction is going to be that whichever countries tackle the most on freedom of expression, they are never going to make it.
Right, because they're suppressing. Yeah, they're suppressing.
Yeah,
the diversity, basically, of
the diversity of thought. Yes, correct. Terms that you were saying before as misinformation, misinformation, disinformation, and so forth. As definition of categorizations, they're not bad. Meaning, it's good to be able to to be as when you have a classification or a taxonomy, it's good to have a superclass. But then the more you can create subclasses to be able to define more precisely specific actions that are going to be differentiated by a specific set of parameters, let's say, I got no problem with it.
In factual matters.
Yes, correct.
Yes.
It's just that we used to call them lies.
Yes.
And that's it. There is a concept that fascinated me the moment that I read about it many years ago, called defense of the ego. Mm-hmm. I'm not 100% sure that's a proper term per se, because I tend not to find it when I go and look for it, but I remember exactly how it was in this book. And it defines something that we know happens as a psychological mechanism. For some reason, this person just called it defense of the ego, and it stuck to me. So defense of the ego is basically once you establish your own life or set of beliefs across a specific idea, and that you build around it all your activities and everything that you do, trying to take down that particular belief becomes exceedingly hard, because you would need to take some steps back and look at a bigger perspective, and then most importantly, admit that you were wrong.
Yes.
And that's just not happening.
No, because we rationalize constantly.
Correct. So that rationalization is essentially trying for you to keep your sanity in. Mm-hmm. And anytime that someone is going to be proposing an idea that might be contradicting that kernel of belief, you just lose it. And in the case of civil society, well, they had mechanisms, as we were discussing before, to increasingly put aside and put people or just kick them out. I've known several people in the NGO sector who, for one reason or another, they became problematic or were problematized. Mm-hmm. It's also very interesting for the viewers to always pay attention to when a word becomes a verb. That is an indication that someone is trying to manipulate language to try to reach a place, because it also means, so an adjective is a qualifier. A verb requires someone to do the action. Mm-hmm. So a qualifier, you never know where it comes from, blah, 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 blah. I mean, what may have happened to someone to be qualified X, Y, or Z. If a verb is involved, it means someone has done something. Mm-hmm. Therefore, you can find a culprit. And it doesn't matter if the culprit is going to be vague enough. So, sufficient people are going to fall into that. It's all of this comes about systemic. So it's not homeless people. It's unhoused.
Yes.
Because then someone has kicked them out from the house or have not given them a house. They are at the receiving end of a problem. Sure. most people who would use that term have never worked with homeless. Never. Because the circumstances are way more complex, and a lot of them don't even want to go to shelters. I was going to say based on those terms that were introduced on misinformation,
disinformation,
malinformation, disinformation. The way the NGO sector, the way big tech was handling it was through fact-checking.
Fact-checkings, yeah.
Oof. So fact-checkers were essentially networks of either NGOs or private companies that would be lending human labor to double-check either So there was a number of things that we're doing. There was content moderation from horrible videos of people being killed and so forth, yada yada yada. But there was also the ideas part of things. So I'm expressing an idea, what I'm going to do with that. And in order to be a proper fact checker, there was such thing as being certified.
Oh, right, okay.
There was an organization called the International Fact Checking Network, IFCN, I think it was. Which you could go through a training and eventually get a piece of paper that says, hey, you know how to fact check. Who was paying for that? Google, Meta, all right? The same people that would eventually be hiring the organizations that get certified by that. So it was a closed circle of basically establishing, if I can modify the sources of information, Wikipedia type of situation, and I can also have under a certain control the people who are supposed to be doing those checkings, and I provide them with the absolute control as to whether a post is going to be taken down or not, then basically I have rigged the whole system. And that was the adoption of debunking. The reason why I'm mentioning all of this is because we have moved into another phase. I tend to quite agree with the working hypothesis that Elon did save freedom of expression by buying Twitter, because I have observed the before and the after, and most importantly, community notes.
Yes.
Community notes was the dagger on the dagger on the side, or the thorn in the side for all the fact checking. That's the reason why I'm mentioning it. He was able, his team, I mean, I don't think the guy is coding, you know what I mean? But he was the one putting forward that. I also suspect that was also an idea inside the devs team that was just, pushed back. He may not have come out without, he maybe have left it happen.
Yes, I see.
But never mind what was the story. The fact is that we ended up having community notes, and they are not perfect because there is ways to rig the system, etc., etc. That's totally fine.
It's like the Wikipedia issue again. It worked for a while, and then there was a determined kind of influx of ideologues.
Yes.
Who then?
Yeah. So I know people who are doing the tracking on the data to try to show that there's been actors who have been trying to manipulate. Think about the fact that Meta decided to also move towards a community node system, and the fact checkers just went away for the most part. Now, the reason why that is significant is because about almost at the same time, about 2 years ago, we started hearing in the NGO sector a push for a new flashy new buzzword: pre-bunking. So we had debunking, which was the model of you give me the information and I'm going to debunk the information post. So the fact happens, and after the fact, after the posting, I will try to correct the information should I believe that it is incorrect.
Okay.
That's the philosophy. Now, pre-bunking is I shall provide you with the information before the post is done so that I can correct your wrong ways. As I was saying before, misinformation, disinformation, malinformation used to be called lies.
Yeah.
Okay. Pre-bunking used to be called propaganda.
You have to submit the information that you're going to post.
No. Governments shall provide you with the information.
Oh.
They will provide you as much information on a given topic as necessary. Von der Leyen has been giving speeches about it. Pre-bunking is the future, because we need to be telling people that certain things are right and certain things are not right. We get to be the center of the truth. And I don't know, I don't know who needs to hear this. Like, hello, get a book and read a couple of books, and this is going to be scaring the hell out of you.
I mean, they've been doing it for the last 4 years of certainly the Biden administration, with the help of the media. Basically, most of the leaks in the New York Times have come from the government.
So if you look at the operations that have been done, they are mostly media oriented. And that's essentially because it's the way that the black box of your head consumes information to try to self-actualize and understand what's the medium in which it's moving. You require as much information as the environment in which you move. So if you're a farmer and you're in a small farm, all the information that you require is, how your cows are doing and, how the weather is going to be going. That's your surface of need, or your volume of need. The more international you become, the more attached you become to matters that might not even matter too much to you in terms of ultimate consequences, but you get involved with them. And you require all of that much information. Who is giving you that information will be able to generate the narrative in your head, because you're processing that information. And most of the time, we tend to be not trustworthy. I don't want to call it naive, but for the most part, we are gullible people, and we, with the exception of the psychopaths and sociopaths out there, which I still want to believe they are, in the 10-15% of the population only. We tend to be, we live in society. So, okay, so maybe the distinction is depending on which society you are. But in the West, in general, we tend to still have a mentality of a high trust society, which has the ultimate or the initial consequence that I listen to the news and I believe that the host of that news show is truthfully talking to me, telling me, how things are.
I think there's a demographic like that, certainly, which they call boomers, who are still in that high trust category. I'm not sure as further down that you go just through that generational stack. I think it changes somewhat. I guess the mainstream media, still think that they have a role to play. Which is why they're still hanging on.
And it's also why they are losing their... Can I curse?
Oh, yeah, of course you can.
Okay. They are basically losing their shit with the new models of information that have been coming out, streamers and so forth. Because all of a sudden, it's way too many channels to be able to control. There is an interesting development, again, somehow recently. Okay, two things on the same topic. First, a few weeks ago, I was with someone who works in communications. She works in a university, and I overheard a conversation where they were going to issue a certificate for content developers, for influencers. So they wanted to certify.
Course.
Yes.
Yes. Oh, I see. Okay.
They wanted to certify influencers, content creators, so that you can show that I know what I'm doing. But then again, you go to those classes, and I would like to see what's going to be the syllabus, and what's the take, and what's the intentionality behind it. And second, I also recently heard about the intention. I'm fuzzy on the details, so I'm just going to look at it from a very high level analysis. Apparently they want to start unionizing content creators, but more specifically the people working for content creators. And that's kind of a sign that the needle is moving, and then it started needing to look into new markets, because maybe the money is drying in certain places, and it's being redirected to those places, to those new content creator channels. And please never lose the grip on things.
No.
We have control, and we have unions here that can basically sway things in this particular industry. Oh my. If the industry changes, or the center of information changes, we shall not lose our control and our grip upon it, basically. It's a funny development. It's a losing proposition long term for governments in general. It's the reason why you see all of these attempts with the Online Safety Act and the DSA in Digital Services Act in the EU, and this chat control thing that is coming out, which is so ridiculous. It's so
What is
crazy.
that?
So
we'll talk about the Online Safety Act a little later.
Yes.
So what is this?
Which one?
The chat.
Online Safety Act? Chat control is essentially the attempt from the EU to have unfettered access to all your private conversations through chat.
Oh yes, I mean this is wrapped up in the Online Safety Act, isn't it?
No, that's from the EU.
Sorry,
and it's going to be voted in October.
Let me just look through my notes here. There's a key aspects of the UK Online Safety Act: a duty of care, age verification, prevents spread of harmful content that may not be illegal.
The terms harm and hate have been so weaponized and made so blur. Everything can be interpreted as hate for as long as it is something that I perceive as hate.
The age verification kind of mandates, I think, because part of Article 19's protections is to secrecy and impart information anonymously. But if age verification is, mandatory, that violates that. And this is it, the Online Safety Act scanning clause, which is intended to detect child sexual abuse materials and has been criticized potentially from undermining end-to-end
encryption. Yes.
Encryption, yes.
So that's what's called CSAM, child sexual abuse materials.
Yeah.
Bullshit.
Well, I mean, of course, it's always for the sake of the children. Won't somebody think of the children? And by the way,
if they wanted to protect the children properly, the first thing that they would do is proper campaign to have parents to be the ones paying attention to what their kids are doing online. That's it. Provide actual guardian software that works properly for your kids, so that I still want them to see, YouTube, but I don't want them to see all of YouTube, or I don't want them for them to go on Facebook Messenger for whatever reason. Okay. I mean, you should be able to you select at home what kind of movies they watch, what kind of books do they have at hand, and you can tell them, this particular book, once you're a little bit older, because it tackles with topics, whatever. Why can't we do that with technology? It's absolutely nonsensical. And we do have the means to do so. Yeah.
And what it's not taking any account of is, video games like Roblox.
Yeah.
Roblox.
Roblox,
in my case, in Little Big Planet was like a really big game a few years ago. And pedophiles are just always all over these places, and they're pretending to be children. We found one of them trying to kind of access to our son when he was about 10 years old, because their private messaging wasn't. It was kind of like Snapchat. It would just disappear.
Yeah, it would disappear. Yeah.
And we wouldn't have known if we hadn't walked in. You'd think it's a safe environment, but then a picture flashes up, and suddenly there's a man's piece of tackle on the TV screen, and it's like, what? And then it goes, and you can't access it anymore. So you've got no proof. If they're worried about that kind of thing, then they'll be talking to these because these are where these things where children coalesce, or where pedophiles coalesce, basically.
I read that they actually kicked out an account who was exposing the pedophiles.
Really? Yeah. No way.
Roblox kicked one account that was specifically dedicated into identifying and exposing pedophiles. That's what I was reading. I haven't looked into the topic, but there was the picture of the user and everything. And what the hell? It's always an excuse. It's always an excuse. CSAM has been out there for the longest time. Every time that I hear, it's because of the children, my red flags just go all the way up. Yeah. Because it's not the intention. End-to-end encryption is the ability for messages to be encrypted in transit. So when I'm sending a message from my device, it gets encrypted in my device, and it only gets decrypted at the destination, not through the intermediaries. Historically speaking, that has not been the case for most applications. And the problem that, of course, it forces is that despite the fact that intelligence services will have points of concentration of traffic where they can try to sniff as much as possible, with proper encryption systems, that is just useless. Never mind the conversation as a post-quantum situation. That's a whole different topic. But as things stand, the reason why they want to crack on E2E is because they have difficulties for E2E, and even if they have methodologies to try to overcome it, in the aggregate, it's very costly. It's not easy at all. I think you lost my camera.
I did lose your camera.
Anyway, so as I was saying, the excuse with CSAM has always been lurking around, and so.
Well, I mean,
there is two types of software that you're going to be using in the broad strokes: open source software, closed source software. Open source software, people can go through the code and see if anything is happening. It doesn't mean it's not always the case that people go through the code and check it. So the fact that something is open source is not an automatic badge of safety.
Okay.
It just opens the door for someone to be able to find if there is something shady there. Now, closed source, no way, because that's not disclosed by the company. And so I remember, and I have no proof to what I'm going to say, it's just a logical process on the argumentation. When Meta was saying, oh, we're going to be using end-to-end encryption in WhatsApp and in Messenger, et cetera, so that no one can be worried about whether we are intercepting information. I found that to be a hilarious statement, because if I'm the one in control of both applications at the sender and the receiver, I don't need to decrypt the information in transit. I just need to read it in the app. You know what I mean? So if I need to do information processing on the message that I'm sending, let's go for Bali for the trip. Before I send the message, I just do all the processing I need, and I send the signal to Meta. Hey, this guy is going to go to Bali. Show him Bali ads next time he goes on Facebook. So it's ridiculous to think that E2E is the magnificent shield. It depends on how you're going to be using it and what's the intermediary between the interface of you generating the information and the actual encryption moment.
So we talked about how did you pass the terms misinformation and disinformation? I know you said lying.
So misinformation would be information that is incorrect without you even knowing it. So if I'm telling you some piece of information that I have not corroborated myself, and it might be just no, but I'm telling you to you, and typically, well, in fact, it does involve that there is no malicious intent from my part. That this information I know the information is wrong.
Okay.
And I'm giving it to you specifically because I want a reaction from you, or I want to achieve something. By
design.
Correct. And malinformation was another term that was coined, something along those lines as with a specific bad intention in mind, something along those lines. I don't remember right now what was the specific definition of it, but it came up later. And it has to do with malware, as in malware. The root of the word comes because of malware.
I see. So how did you decide which prominent figures you were going to approach, like Julian Assange or Edward Snowden, these kinds of things? And what was the process kind of gathering that diverse group?
We had a communication platform in which we were basically exchanging options, and people would, we basically had a spreadsheet where we were putting names, and people would, so everyone was welcome except if there was two negative notes, basically.
Okay.
And if that was the case, it was discussed, because it wasn't. The idea was not to stop people from signing. It was just to make sure that none of those people were not properly aligned with what was the intention. That there was, no Trojan horses and things like that, or potentially controversial people who would also undermine
no malware.
the intention. Yeah, correct. I believe there was only 2 to 3 people who were decided not to be added, and they were not particularly controversial, as in,
no,
it wasn't Nick Fuentes or anything like that. It's just to put it that way. All the people that were approached were very reasonable people, independently of their position. Didn't Zizek, is his name?
Yes,
Zizek?
I didn't mention him at the beginning because I couldn't pronounce his name.
I mean, Oliver Stone, Snowden. I mean, people can have whatever individual opinions they have for certain things. I mean, people may or may not like Snowden. It doesn't matter. The fact that you have such a varied range of people from all over the place subscribing to the principle of freedom of expression is what we wanted.
Did anyone refuse to sign?
Yes.
Okay.
And I can tell you by someone that I approached, and the reason why they decided not to was because there was a reference to the UDHR, because that particular person is not at all okay with the UN. And just the fact that the mention was there, that it was articulated. Yeah. Otherwise, signature would have happened.
I see, because they obviously believe the UN is, part of the
evil
machinery. Yeah.
Yes. So basically, they didn't. Go again.
Which it is, basically.
I agree. I mean, so when the argument was given, I was thinking, yeah, I get it. So there was a need to articulate, because the thing is, the feelings that you may have with the UN and that I share with you have nothing to do with the original UN. It has to do with what it has become and the kind of things that we see nowadays. That's when all the legitimacy goes down, which is, personally, I didn't see any problem with mentioning or articulating the whole thing based on a document that is per se well defined and is well accepted, and it was a good anchor for the conversation. While at the same time, I could understand someone who's actively trying to expose corruption and so forth in a number of organizations, not wanting to give legitimacy to one of the organizations that is on the list.
Yeah, because it was drafted in 1948, wasn't it? So
that is correct. Very different times.
Yeah.
In fact, if you look at the voting, I believe only 2 abstentions happened. There was no negative. There was no opposition. All in favor, except 2 abstentions. Name me any single resolution in the past 20 years with that track record.
So the term censorship industrial complex is a striking phrase. How did you arrive at the concept?
I believe the concept was coined by Schellenberger. At least the first time that I heard it was from him. And so those who haven't looked into the topic may feel that it's an exaggeration as a term.
They might feel it's a bit polemic.
Complex. Yes. Oof, it's absolutely fit for purpose. When you start looking into the amount of organizations that have been involved into actively censoring people across the past 2 decades, and specifically during the pandemic, et cetera, it was very, very clear that there was a whole system of not only financing, but also operationalizing at great scale. Institutions were being infiltrated with the creation of either departments or agencies or joint collaborations of several types. The money was flowing for those kind of things, and you can only call it censorship what they were doing. It was very blatant, and the scale of it wasn't just 5 organizations. It's dozens of them.
Yeah.
Very well coordinated, and there was a business behind it.
Yeah.
That's when you know that you have a complex that is going to be maintaining and perpetuating itself across time, because the money is flowing. There is an actual market for it, that a market that has been created by a certain number of interests that they want to get to specific objectives. Let's put it that way. That was not going to go anywhere. And the same as you have a military industrial complex, you also have misinformation and censorship. In this case, industrial complex. The word industrial is there because it is manufactured for consumption. There's a product that is being built, and the product is the suppression of opinions, the suppression of information, so that other opinions and other positions may flourish.
So the declaration warns about government and tech firm collaboration in censorship.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give us a specific example that informed this in the consultation?
It was critical that Elon put that room inside the by then Twitter offices, allowing a number of journalists to go through communications and internal documents. So the Twitter files revealed a lot as to all the injerencias, how do you say this in English? All the meddling, basically, that governments have been, all the pushing and all the lobbying that governments have been doing with Twitter, specifically the US government. Without that, there was, it's not as if people are idiots. Hello. People had a sense about what was going on, the type of information that was always being censored or was being demonetized or was being put, etc., etc. It was not as if you couldn't, add 2 + 2.
Yes.
You just never had an actual evidence. And in the discourse of ideas, in the marketplace of ideas, people would shut you down like, you don't have evidence for that.
Yes,
okay,
it's exactly.
Sure.
It's just exactly like Russia. If everybody suspected what was happening, but it's only now since Tulsi's released the
yes,
that we have proof.
I appreciate so much what the current disclosures are showing in terms of just clearing the air. Yeah. It's not even about vindicating people. I don't even think that's productive necessarily to certain persons, people who have been on the receiving end of punishment. Definitely it does, and I'm happy for those. It's just indeed on the big scheme of things, it's not there about retaliation or anything. It's just to clear the air, because you need to know what actually happened so it doesn't happen again. Mm-hmm. It's a very simple equation that for some reason, from a Lamarckian perspective, we are not passing down.
No, exactly. And if we know for sure that it has happened, we know for sure that it can happen again. And there's no
correct.
Yeah.
The precedent is there, and then we can try to avoid for it to happen again in the future. And I'm very grateful for the fact that. So think about. So I can't get into whether there were ulterior motives because I'm not in his head. I can only analyze the situation from what were the steps taken. One, Twitter gets purchased.
Who are you talking about?
Elon. Okay. Because I'm going to get into a number of steps, and I could start thinking about, yes, he wanted all of this to go out because he had ulterior motives. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I'm not in his head, and I'm not judging that. I'm judging what I saw, and what I saw was he buys the platform. All of a sudden, a lot of people who have been censored get platformed again. I never understood. I would have never voted for Trump to contextualize things in 2016. I never understood why he was taken out from Twitter. Mm-hmm. To me, it was ridiculous. He's the bloody president of a country. You don't take him down. It's unreal to me that you get to have that kind of decision. I don't care how much you don't like what he's saying. No. That's exactly freedom of expression. It's a problem of freedom of expression. And he represents a whole country. The equation, the math is not mathing to me. Anyway, so those things happen. And then the most impressive thing follows. Well, him coming in with a sink inside the office, that was fun. But he opens an actual room with restricted access to a select amount of journalists, which he doesn't necessarily. If you look at the relationship that he has kept with some of those, it's very obvious that they were not on payroll, because I believe Barry Weiss cannot really stand Elon at the moment, or little after, because of all the actions that he took. So I will look at it from independent thinking people with enough qualification to understand the information that was served to them were given access to basically roast a whole company that was just acquired and needed to make money.
Yeah.
It's impressive.
Yes.
It's an impressive move. And again, I'm not getting into all the possible mega interpretations, meta interpretations. That I'm not getting into that. I mean, maybe he just bought it just for that. You know what I mean? I mean, there you go. That's it. And maybe it was a childish attitude. Maybe it was a smart attitude. I don't know. I don't know the guy. I cannot judge any of that. What I can judge is that all of a sudden, all of the proofs and all the evidence came out. I'm keeping that. That's my lecture of the situation. That's my reading of the situation. And it's one of the moments where things get so grim across time, and everyone gets so demoralized across time, that seeing that particular shed of light, as in, damn it, we can still get things out every now and then. That was really satisfying.
So what role do you think the Westminster Declaration is playing and influencing policy or public opinion on free speech, kind of globally?
I don't believe it does.
No.
Unfortunately. I don't believe it does, because it's been sitting there for quite some time. And after we published it, there was kind of movement for a month plus. And it seemed to have run its course. And I think it's a shame. That's what I was mentioning before, that yes, there was value on not having one single centralized type of management of the project, while at the same time, for not having found a balance, it seems to have just faded away. And it's a shame, because it's a good declaration, and it should be used as a reference. Now, at a practical term, and I didn't think I was going to plug this, but it makes sense to mention it. One thing is the declaration per se, and another thing is how you operationalize it. And the operationalization will come by how you define those terms in your organization's policies. What I'm trying to say by that is, I've come across a number of organizations that were the target of some cancel mobs. And two things happened. When it worked, two things happened. Whether those organizations did not have policies to counter the arguments, so basically from a quote-unquote legal perspective, that didn't have methodologies in place, or they didn't. Come again?
This could be that for them if they sign up.
Correct. And the second part is having the spine to follow through. So you may have a policy. The people who are supposed to be enforcing the policy, if they don't have a spine, doesn't matter. It's still a piece of paper with pretty words. And so capturing some of those principles into your code of conduct or other policies that you may have into the organization makes a lot of sense in order to spread and operationalize that. In the case, for instance, of my organization, one thing that we did was, when I started realizing all of things, because again, back in 2018, I was an idiot. I'm still an idiot nowadays, but I've learned a little bit along the years. And what I realized was that precisely a lot of those cancellations, all those mobs, were coming after organizations that may have what they consider rogue elements. And I did have a number of people in my organization volunteering or participating long-term with us, that because of the personal circumstances would definitely have been the objective or the target of those cancellations. And the decision was made the organization shall not do any of that. I'm not going to be kicking out people from my organization for personal opinions that they express in other places. But then they realize, damn, I don't have a document to, to operationalize that or to express it. And so we went through a code of conduct process, and we actually took one of the, I think it was Mozilla 2.0 or something like that, Mozilla code of conduct. We eliminated a lot of the stupid language. So for instance, I don't agree with protected characteristics. I think that's dumb. It's the moment that you start protecting specific characteristics, you are basically creating kings and queens.
Yeah.
That's it. You're basically putting in a situation where they're always going to be using that term or that label or whatever it is in order to say, oh, you're against me because of. No, I just think you're an idiot. It have nothing to do with the particular characteristic of yours. Now, we removed all of that, and we turn it into discrimination based on immutable characteristics. So it would be broader, but not specific, targetable. And Danny Boyle, no, what's his name? Damn it. This guy from GB News, the one from Titania McGrath.
Oh, and Andrew.
Andrew Doyle.
Andrew Doyle, yeah.
Andrew Doyle, yes. Right about that time, he actually issued, I think it was an article, where he was laying out some possible policies for unwoke companies. And I did like some of the terms that he was using there, and I incorporated them. And I put the reference at the end of the COC for all the sources that we used. And the idea that we had at that time was, it would be cool if a number of NGOs could just have policy templates that they can adopt very, very quickly. Mm-hmm. Because creating a policy is a pain, okay? And it's not always self-evident. And we're thinking maybe one of the solutions to try to cut the virus at the very beginning is to immunize organizations by having, policies and codes of conduct that very specifically avoid those things from the very beginning. Mm-hmm. And then, the having on our spine, that's something you cannot really have. That's a personality thing. But yes, I would have hoped for the declaration to have more impact. I think that there should be more exposure to it. I thought that the Wikipedia situation would have given a bit more of exposure as well. None of that happened.
No, it's a shame. I guess it could also make you a target as well.
Possibly. Mm. I'm actually surprised. I'm guessing there might be a before and after this episode, because
because you're coming out now.
Yeah, somehow. And again, it's not as if I was hiding actively.
Yeah.
I wasn't just not extremely outspoken, and yeah, it's a funny. It's been a series of funny years thinking, when is this going to happen? As in, when will they decide that I have crossed the line?
Why are you doing it now then? Why are you doing it now? Do you feel a change?
No, not necessarily. It's because I never had the opportunity.
Okay.
I mean, I wouldn't go out of my way, in particular, and because the conversation comes, I would find it to be hypocritical if you were asking me questions now and I wouldn't answer what I think. Mm-hmm. If anyone ever asked me, they got the answer. In fact, one of my premises is you can ask anything that you want, just make sure you want the answer.
Yeah.
One example about civil society and codes of conducts. So we applied to be members of an organization that, again, I shall not name, because I'm not 100% sure how much open I can be about it. And I told my team, when someone from my team came, we've been approached whether we would like to join this organization. I told them, they're never going to have us. They're woke. We're not. And I know already, but I'm happy to be proven wrong. Because it is true that having being a member of the organization opens doors to be able to talk to a number of people, and from an advocacy. When you play this game with the NGOs, you need to walk a very fine line where You don't want to lose your principles, but at the same time, you want to be able to talk to everybody. And so you play the I wouldn't call it political game because I don't like politics, but you try to be as flexible as possible to be able to at some point reach. If they don't like the message, then too bad. That's fine. You can cut the ties at that point. You can, some bridges can go down. You still need to have built the bridge to be able to pass the message across. And so that very thin line is complicated. And I thought, okay, let's give it a try, see what happens. And true enough, they say no. Now, they didn't say no in written. They organized a call with me, and they told me, well, there's been a number of concerns at different levels in the process of the vetting of the request, and they all have to say they all have to do with our code of conduct. And I cannot tell you, it has to do with your posts on X.
Yeah.
And I cannot tell you exactly which posts. However, I can tell you, and I can read to you the paragraph, just one paragraph, that generates the conflict in the code of conduct. And of course, it was the one about gender. Now, the reason why I'm mentioning this and the reason why this is important, it's because the losing situation is not so much for us as it is for them. And what I mean by that is their argument was we need to pay attention to the concerns of our current members in deciding which new members join the coalition. And we need to, as a result, we need to evaluate the possibility of future conflict should you become part of the coalition, because those differences will not go away. And so they may file concerns about you or about your organization moving forward, and we need to minimize. Basically, he didn't want overhead. And so I basically argued, what you are an organization that defends freedom of expression. This is a freedom of expression matter. You don't get to tell us what we can say. You don't get to tell me what I can and cannot say in my own personal capacity. It doesn't matter if my profile says that I'm CEO of the AO Foundation, then I have kind of a dual capacity in there. It's still a freedom of expression problem. They granted me that was the a problem. And what I told them at that point was, listen, you have put yourself, just because of that piece of text, you have put yourself in an unbearable position. Because yes, you will not let me in as an organization to your coalition, and you are avoiding that overhead you're so much concerned about. However, you're creating the precedent that now your coalition is guided by that particular paragraph. Yeah. And you have just ratified the control that those organizations have to determine whether X or Y may or may not come based on alignment, basically. For things that have not even to do with the organization itself. Meaning to say, outside of the boundaries of this coalition, whatever I do or say is nobody's business. And I also have a friend of mine who's upon the same kind of situation with another technology-related organization, and it's exactly the same modus operandi. It's always the same: redefine the terms, update code of conduct, or whatever relevant policy that can be used as a hammer. Do some digging, or keep everyone on their toes to be able to kick them out if they become a problem for you. And that's something that NGOs need to get rid of as soon as possible. Otherwise, all the bad press that the NGO sector has gotten because of what was discovered through Doge will never go away. They need to now step up their game and prove themselves that they can be independent, they can be doing actual work, and that there's also that there's a space for them that has to be respected.
Yeah. So has there been any impactful response at all to the declaration since its release?
Not that I'm aware of. And again, it is not impossible that either some signatories or people who are involved have done and achieved things on their own. It just has not been communicated to us. I can tell you as well that some of the people who signed did express their concern that there may have been negative repercussions, and some of them would think about it. One specific person that I approached rejected out of, how do I put it? He was absolutely as in he was absolutely on board with, yes, this is stupid, this is shit, this cannot be happening, it's killing societies, and he's a very famous writer, and he just didn't feel like getting into another battle at his age.
Okay.
It was a bit of a self-preservation, if you will, and it would have been amazing if you had signed, because bloody hell.
It's not going to be Stephen King, is it?
No.
Yeah, I think we know that one.
Oh, how the mighty have fallen.
Yes. So what do you hope what the long-term legacy of the Westminster Declaration will be? And how do you plan to continue advocating for it?
I think the best way that you can advocate for it is not even needing to reference it, is just not shut it up. Because the declaration is just a piece of paper with pretty words. What really matters is how you enact it, how you operationalize all of those thoughts. The principles are there. We can, you can be more or less articulate in the way you put them down, and in your ability to get people to sign a piece of paper. In the end, it's the small actions that you do on a daily basis that are going to be determining whether freedom of expression remains or not. And the most pernicious one is self-censorship, by all means, which is part of the course with all of these attempts from, weaponizing freedom of expression against freedom of expression. Please think twice before using this word, nigger. Go to hell, seriously. I mean, it's stupid. I'm so tired with. I mean, you might be demonetized or even taken down just because I said that word, but it's stupid. It's a word. The intention was to be what we were back in the days analyzing. And for some reason, a select group of people can sprout. Okay, not even think about the word. It's the sound. There's a specific type of people who can generate a sound with their vocal cords, and others cannot. Why? It's ridiculous.
It would be different if you were calling somebody that, or rather just saying the word out loud.
So if I like a rapper, I can't say the lyrics.
People have been cancelled. People have lost so many things just for kind of singing along.
There was this Chinese teacher in the US because he was saying nigga, and they thought he was saying the insult, but it's nigga. It's an actual two words in Mandarin.
In Mandarin.
Are you kidding me? I mean, wait until people discover that in Spanish we say negro for black color. It's intention should have always been. Intention is a paramount element in judicial court. Why this not when I'm in? Because you have to think too much about context. Well, everything is about context. Flash news for you. But you see, it has nothing to do with a political leaning in particular,
or even offense. It's got nothing to do with offense.
Yes. So for instance, we've gotten used. I'm going to put myself into hellfire now. We've gotten used into certain words being weaponized that way, or even used as a shield. As a gay person, you don't get to tell me of, whatever, all the alphabet mafia strategies to try to get themselves out and somehow protect themselves through intersectionality. Yesterday, I was reading a post of someone saying, I don't want to paraphrase it wrongly, something along the lines that because I'm a Jew, you cannot criticize me. I don't care. So an opinion will never have to be put, Muslim, Jews, gay, straight. I don't care. None of those labels put you in a position of special treatment. Your ideas and your actions are what are to be judged, and there may not be consequences for them because, again, freedom of expression. Hello, it's just you cannot have a special shield just because you sit in a specific category or in a specific group that someone has come up with.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's very counterproductive long term in the aggregate. And because everyone has their own plight and their own problems and their own struggles, fine. There's plenty of people having very shitty lives and having a lot of problems. You don't see them complaining about it or asking them, us left-handed pinkies, you don't get to tell us how is our difficulty. You don't get to tell people, left-handed people, how difficult it is to use scissors. Dude.
That is a systemic oppression.
Exactly. The whole it's a scissor industrial complex against left-handed people.
Sinister. Sinister.
I could tell you stories about my grandparents pissing on me because I wasn't able to cut meat properly until I was able to show them that they are nice for left-handers and right-handers because I'm left-handed.
Yes.
They always say, you cut weird. Say, yeah, because my bloody knife, it's the cutting side of it is on the bottom for me.
Yeah.
And it should be on the top. And it took me years to be able to until I found both. Like, can you see how different they are? Oh, yeah, but the past 5 years you've been hammering me on this. So what I'm trying to say is that everyone can come up with things that they are traumatized about or problematizing or whatever. Yeah. I don't think any single label puts you into a specific protection or force field that should avoid any scrutiny or criticism of your ideas. If your ideas are good, they will stand the test of time.
Absolutely.
That's it. No problem.
So after that, John, where can people find you?
So I'm quite active.
Not that you might not want them to now.
I don't know. A good thing is I'm being in Malaysia is going to be costly to come and find me.
Yeah.
If I was somewhere in Europe, maybe they could get a Ryanair. Come again?
Where could we find you online?
Yeah, so online I'm only active on X at GF Queralt. And if not, well, we do things with the IO Foundation. People can go to theiofoundation.org or look more into detail in terms of documentation at docs.theiofoundation.org. And hopefully we get to give them some good news in the coming months about making sure that technology doesn't mess around with them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, is there no way we can say the kind of this what did Schellenberger call it? We call it the censorship industrial complex. Can there not be an anti-censorship industrial complex? Could there not be new NGOs springing up, or will that inevitably go the same way?
So funny that you mentioned that, because when I was the step 2 on what I was saying about having policies that people can replicate, one of the things that we've been doing in our organization is, because our organization is pretty fringe, and by that I mean we are one of the few who are looking into how to solve this problem from a technical perspective by trying to make sure that technical standards don't mess around, let's say. There's never going to be a timeline in which the AO Foundation manages to do this on their own. Yes, we are. It doesn't matter how much we grow, it would be an impossible task. So you need to have plenty of other organizations doing exactly the same type of work. And in order to do that, one of the things that we've been working is being able to template ourselves. It's not only the policies, but all the processes and everything that we do. So that someone wanting to start an organization can just spin it in a matter of a couple of weeks. That's pretty much our objective. And that's an ongoing project that we've been running for maybe 2 years now. And anyone who watches this episode and would like to collaborate with that, they are more than welcome, because there's always need for help in the NGO sector. The idea is that, yes, you need to have more organizations. And I'll say if you allow me to just go on that just 1 second, one of the importance is not only, so people are concerned about Open Safety Act, chat control, whatever is coming down the pipeline for Australia, which they're also looking into digital ID. What apparently is also in, I can't remember if it's in Congress. I think it's in Congress. In the US, they also have a bill for digital ID. That one is not getting that much exposure. I'm not 100% sure why. All that I'm trying to say is that if you have all of these different pushes coming at the same time, and they will come up with some problems, such as the Online Safety Act is being countered by VPNs. And all of a sudden, you've got the minister going on TV saying, "Oh, people shouldn't be using VPNs." And paraphrasing, basically, who was saying, "If you're using a VPN, the only reason why you were using one is because you're a pedophile." Okay. Again, paraphrasing, but that was basically what he was implying. And then they may move into having legislation against VPNs, or at least force VPNs to do also check ID. Age verification. And when you have all of those different pushes, what you're going to have is a very heterogeneous environment where technology is going to conflict. They're going to be pushing against each other. And so you have, for instance, in the US, so UK had this great idea, but honestly, I think there's something behind it. You know what they say, never let a crisis go to waste. I'm not sure if they're going to look into the 4chan situation. For those who don't know, the UK has actually filed a request against 4chan in the US for them to start implementing age verification and or taking down content. And of course, the US is saying, "You're crazy or what? You're a different jurisdiction." And I'm not sure if it is because they thought they were going to get away with it, or they want to lose the battle and use that as a hammer for something else. I'm not 100% sure what's the play there, because it's way too obviously stupid.
Yeah.
So
they're just I'm trying poking to say, it and seeing what happens.
Correct.
Yeah.
It could be just a probe. Now, the reason why I'm saying all of this is because the moment that you have all of this heterogeneous system, and it becomes increasingly complex for different governments to be able to do the age verification or the ID or the killing of privacy at different levels all across the internet, the obvious next step is to standardize it.
Yes, like the cookies.
Yes. And where will that happen? It will happen in the organizations where we work, where the IO Foundation works. It's one of the reasons why we are there, to try to keep an eye as to what are the authoritarian type of movements that might be happening, because those are going to be inherited. That's part of the problem, that people are not paying attention with standards. It's twofold. One, where those decisions are made, if you're not in the room, someone else is. And you can't always assume they have the best of intentions. Now, if any of those changes are passed, you are going to inherit it, and good luck trying to fight them back, because they will already be there. In fact, you buy your phone, you don't care how the internet is working on your phone. And the features that make possible the internet to work on your phone, if those features change, you will also be none the wiser. And if backdoors or forceful verifications of ID are implemented by design and by default when you buy your products, good luck fighting that.
Well, how many people kind of check the terms of service when their phone is updated?
Oh, yeah. Yes, of course. But the problem, this has been the pet peeve of the organizations from the very beginning, is that all the regulations that you have across the world when it comes to, let's say, data protection laws, they are basically wet papers for us, because they tell you what's supposed to be happening. It's a pretty piece of paper with very nice words telling you, oh, you should have these rights and these rights, but none of them tell you how to operationalize it or how to verify compliance. So if a piece of software claims to be GDPR compliant, for instance, there's no way for me to verify that claim, not in a standard manner. And what it generates is yet one more stone in the shoulders of the responsibility of the final user, who, as you well point out, will not read terms and conditions, and will not go through the verification of a GDPR compliance claim.
No.
Because I got things to do. I have kids to bring to school. Hello. it's people are too busy. And the funny thing is, we have mechanisms for those enforcements in pretty much any industry that you can think of. In this particular case, we are both having this conversation in different buildings.
Yes.
And we are not concerning ourselves as to whether the buildings are going to collapse upon our heads. We assume that is not the case, because before we get into it, there is a procedure, and there's an agency that has the means, and the people who have built the buildings knew exactly what was going to be tested. And they could prepare themselves before the test. And across the years, this cars are typically the best example. Across the whole life cycle of the use of a car, if anything goes wrong, you cannot ride it anymore.
Yeah, well, I mean, there are instances of that going wrong. I don't know if you remember the kite mark in the European Union. There was a kite mark which would tell us when things were safe to use, that plastics weren't flammable, things like that. I don't know, you're aware of the Grenfell disaster in London, the the tower block that caught on fire? It was a few years ago now. Lots of people died.
Was it a hotel?
No, it was a high rise in London. And as soon as I saw it, I thought, how can that happen? It looks like there's an accelerant, because the outside of the building was melting, basically. And of course, in my head, it was, well, there are building regulations that cannot possibly be happening, so it must be an accelerant. But after the fact, we find out that actually the building regulations were changed for councils, so they could use flammable substances on the outsides and refurbishment of high rises. So the rest of us are kind of buying and thinking that we're safe, and the people in the high rise think they're safe because of European Union laws, and they weren't at all. It was so, and nobody told them. Nobody,
and I can assume that was cost-cutting reason behind it.
Well, I'm not sure. Well, it wasn't illegal what they were doing. They found a way around it, but nobody was told. Everybody simply just trusted the fact that because of European Union laws, that all of the substances that were used would obviously not be flammable, but that wasn't true.
It helps for people to think that laws are basically the algorithms that run societies. And as such, there's backdoors and there's bugs.
Yeah. So what can people do?
I know it's hard because there are consequences to speak out. The issue is that the consequence of not speaking out ends up sooner or later being worse than having done so at the very beginning. It's hard for a lot of people are dependent on a number of circumstances. And I would say, I did like what Peterson said back in the days about his objection. I didn't totally agree with him so Peterson at some point had a position as we need to eliminate anonymous accounts on X. And I thought, well, not particularly the most brilliant position, but I knew what he was trying to say. And so I was listening to his argument. And his argument was essentially, if you think that you're going to be in a vulnerable position right now and you require to be anonymous to be able to express yourself, what you need to do is work towards removing those vulnerabilities, because otherwise you will never stop being anonymous. And that checks, or that tracks with the kind of message he's been having for the past year. So it's not, it feels weird as a first argument, but then it makes sense into the construct that he has, the way he views the world. And I think that's not necessarily a bad advice. If you think that at the moment you cannot talk, try to figure out ways to remove all of the dependencies that stop you from being able to speak out. And as much as possible, just speak out. Say what you have to say.
Absolutely.
Let it happen.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, John.
You're welcome. Thanks a lot, Paula.
Okay. I'll speak to you soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me, Paula.
Okay.
Have a good day.